Hello, everybody. It's the Historical Gamer. You can call me Matt, and welcome to episode 8 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. With me today is Jean, the Strategy Wargamer. How are you doing today, Jean?
Not bad, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. We're into the holiday season. What's up? What have you been playing lately?
Yeah, the end of the year kind of thing. Believe it or not, I know I mentioned this last podcast. I've been playing a lot of. I've been finishing my Victoria 2 campaign. Started in 1836, and I'm at 1930, I think, in that game. So I've been playing a lot of that, unfortunately.
Nice. I've been playing a bit of Strategic Command. I just finally got the time. I went on vacation to Puerto Rico for about a week, and it was really nice there. No, I didn't actually. I had a iPad which I used for reading, but I didn't actually get any real gaming in while I was gone. And so I basically took a week off. I had some videos that were lined up and scheduled on my channel, but for more or less a week, I took a week off and just got a lot of reading in, enjoyed the 80-degree weather, and then came back last Wednesday, and it was, I think, negative 15 wind chill when we got off the plane, and we were waiting for our Uber. My hands were so cold, I thought I was going to lose something via frostbite just waiting for an Uber. It was horrible. But
welcome back to reality. It's nothing but cold weather for the rest of the month.
Yeah, it kind of sucks. But I was since I've gotten back, I've been playing a lot of Strategic Command and really enjoying it. And
it's a good game. I like it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've never actually played. I played the demo to the original Strategic Command way back in the day when I think it was Battlefront, were the publishers of the game, and I think the first one came out around the same time as the first combat mission game. So I played that a lot as a demo while I was waiting for Combat Mission to come out, and never bought it or anything, but I kind of gave this game a go, and I've been all around impressed, and kind of spurred to some extent the topic that we're going to talk about today, and that's, I was thinking this game came out in November, and if best games of the year was a thing I had to put together like a formal list on, I think I would struggle, because that would always be, the best of very recent. What have I been playing lately, as opposed to, what did I play in February or March of 2016? It's really hard to put together, but I think we're going to try with this episode. We're going to try a best of strategy game list of 2016.
Yeah, I had to ponder this for quite a few hours or a couple of days. So I have a list. I'm not 100%. I would say I'm 99% there. I was going back and forth on what's number one and what's number two. But I decide, do you want to?
Well, I don't have them in order. So I've got a list of games, but I haven't put them in any particular order. It's the old, these are the best of 2016, but just because I say something first doesn't mean it's the worst, or just because I say something last doesn't mean it's the best. But I guess the first game that I'll talk about may fall into that hall of very recent, if you will. And I hesitate to say whether it's a 2016 game, because it's still in early access. But I'm going to talk about it anyway, because we've actually already talked about it on this channel. And that is Ultimate General Civil War. That would be the first game on my list.
I had a feeling that was going to be on it.
Yeah, there's going to be a couple other games on here you may not be thrilled about and may not agree with me, and we can talk about it. But in terms of Ultimate General Civil War, to me, it is one of the best games of 2016. It fulfills sort of a Civil War Generals 2 remake desire in my heart, because while the gameplay is very different than Civil War General 2, which is a game that harkens back to my childhood and is a very nostalgic game for me, Ultimate General has a sort of a dynamic campaign to a certain extent. So you go through the campaign from the start of the war to Antietam, as far as they have in early access so far, and these battles are linked, your forces are linked, and casualties carry over, and experience carries over, and generals can be wounded or promoted, and we've talked about it on the channel, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, but basically it's a real-time tactics game, real-time simulation game of the American Civil War that puts you in charge of either Union or Confederate forces as you try to build up this core or cadre of elite forces and carry them through the war and win battle after battle and win prestige and fame for yourself. And the game is brilliantly put together. The graphics, while they're not like, super high fidelity 3D graphics, the style is gorgeous. The maps are gorgeous. The user interface is simple. The game is really easy to just pick up and play without knowing anything about the Civil War. And it's deep, too. And that whole campaign and carryover nature really adds some depth to it. And I know you're not totally thrilled with some of the way that some of the battles are handled, where you're kind of jumping from section to section, for example, at Shiloh. But, even if that's part of the game you don't like, it only happens in one battle, for what it's worth. And overall, it's very well done. I've got a few minor quibbles with it, but I think that's mainly because Ultimate General's still in early access. On the whole, I'll say it again, great graphics, great user interface, great simple gameplay, easy to pick up and play, a quick game, an easy game to play, and it's brilliant. And, Ultimate General Civil War, to me, is clearly in the top 3 games for me in 2016, even though it's not fully released yet. I can't say enough positive things about the game.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. It didn't make my top 3. I will have to say the game. So I'm struggling because I have a top 3, and I want to put it as number 1. I really do. But I feel like, the topics that we talked about last week were, and I like the Shiloh campaign, and I think there's 1 or 2 other scenarios where it kind of breaks it up. Is Antietam one, or is it?
So not exactly. So Shiloh's different in that it takes you from one spot of the battlefield and puts you in another spot of the battlefield, and it literally, they're completely separate corners of the battlefield. There's no link to them at all. Other battles do this sort of, you're fighting and all of a sudden you get a notice of, hey, wait a minute, now something else is happening. But Antietam does that. But the difference is Antietam still has the battle going in, in the West Woods by Dunkirk Church, and you still have to fight that, but it just expands the battlefield to another spot, where if you're playing as a Confederate, it's like, okay, now you're being attacked here. And you can actually pull forces from the entire battlefield and reposition them, even if you haven't gotten to that next attack further down the line. So I don't think that would fit that problem that you have with it, where you're disconnected from the 2 flanks.
And you do that with Manassas too, because I kind of understand. I understand why they do that. We were talking about it in the last podcast, but that's why it didn't go for number 1 on my list, because I have to put it as my second best game of 2016. Primarily because of that. I don't, we talked about this last podcast. I don't like being restricted. Just give me the whole map, or at least give it an option to the player. Like, hey, do you want to play it the way we intended it to, or do you want to just sandbox it? We'll give you the map. You go at it. At least give me the option to. It's a very, and this is the way I kind of attribute it to. It's a very sexy game. It's beautiful. It's like the graphics are incredible. The animations are insane. I'll watch videos of it, and it's just like, my gosh, this is so beautiful. But I don't like the limitations. I'm one of those gamers like, listen, I want it all, and I don't want to be restricted. And I believe it or not, that's and I feel like the campaign that could have done. And some people are going to fight with me on this, but they could have been done more, like I like an open-ended campaign, and just to kind of replay the same battles over the same places that we know. Like, I like making my own Gettysburg, like we talked in the last podcast. I don't want my Gettysburg to be in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I want to, on the campaign mode, to take my Army of Northern Virginia, instead of going to Gettysburg, in that direction, I want to go after Washington, D.C., and my Gettysburg being an assault on D.C. That changed the course of the war because I lost or whatever happened. I like kind of the way Paradox does things. They'll give you the things. You can follow the old. You can invade Europe and Normandy, or you can just throw the rule book out the window and say, you know what, I'm going to invade Calais, and I'm going to go and invade, or I'm going to invade through Denmark. You can do anything you want. Choice is up to you. You can choose the historical way, or you could choose your way. And I like games that do that, because it throws the ball in your court, and you can make that choice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hear you. Obviously, I know we've talked about that a bit, and you're more than welcome to your own opinions. What I will say about this list, and I think it's obvious, but just to caveat it, is that this list is only made up of games that I have played for me, and I assume it's for you as well. There were a ton of strategy games that came out in 2016, and I felt that 2016 to me was almost the year of me playing games from 2014 and 2015. Like, I was catching up on games I missed. So I'm sure that my list, before we go any further, and maybe to some extent your list as well, will be incomplete in the sense that I didn't play a lot of these games, or I didn't get to a lot of these games till the year was almost over. So it's hard for me to say this was my best game of 2016 if I didn't play it. Some of the Total War Warhammer, for example, I didn't play that at all. I was so busy playing other games, so it's hard for me to rate games that I didn't play. But obviously, you've got your reservations about Ultimate General. It would be cool to be able to say, let's go and let's take Washington, but that's not what the game is doing, and I'm okay with that. And that's why it's on my list. But again, my list is in no particular order. I don't know if you want to share one of your games, and I know you wanted to order yours, so feel free. And what's, I guess, do you want to start at your number 3?
Yeah, well, number 2 would be Ultimate General Civil War, because it absolutely looks beautiful. As much as, I rag on the game and go in negatives, the game's absolutely beautiful. The design structure of the game, with the core, like we talked about last week, the way to design the core system, the division system. There's so many things they did right in that game. So I don't want to put that out. I don't want to not mention that. But number 3, I don't know if some people might agree with me on this, but the Heroes of Normandy for iOS would have to be on my 3rd. And it's not like a blockbuster game for 2016, and it was a major expansion pack / iOS update for it. But the reason I add that in is because a couple of things I noticed. One, for the cost of the game, I believe the game is $20, but I might be incorrect. But I believe when it launched, it was $20. The game gives you a full desktop version of the game for a mobile price. The one cool thing I love about Slytherin is their multiplayer. Is you could buy the desktop version of the game, or you could buy the mobile version of the game, and you could play people on both platforms. So if you decide, like, you know what, I'm going to get the iPad version of the game because I'm never home, I'm never on my laptop, I always have my iPad or my iPhone on me, and I never get a chance to play games, you can actually launch the game on here and play people that might have the desktop version. Let's say your friend has the desktop version, you want to play him, you can get the iPhone version, and while at work, you can take 5-minute breaks and do a turn playing them. And you could play them, on your iPhone versus their desktop version of the game. And I really love that Slytherin implemented a multiplayer system like that. So the reason I chose it as number 3 is because of that, but also, like, for what you get in the game, you get a full-blown editor, you get a full campaign mode, single-player mode, just literally the game has so much replay value. It's insane for the price. I think I even put in my review, I said, I have to question Slytherin's, decision to price a game that has this much content at this low price, because it's great for the consumer because, we're getting a lot for our price, but a full-blown editor, a full Wikipedia of it, a multiplayer, single player, numerous versions of the single player aspect. It's insane. So I had to put that as number 3 because I have to acknowledge the amount of content for this game that you get for a simple, price. I had to put that on my top 3.
Yeah, no, I did play it a bit. I will say the game didn't resonate a ton with me. I'm not a huge board gamer, so it's very much a board game conversion to iOS. That's really what it is, and that's fine. I wish there would be more games that would do it well. I think a good example of a game that did it well, not on this list or anything like that, but a good game that did do it well is Twilight Struggle. I don't know if that came out this year or not, but it was another board game conversion. It wasn't a Matrix game or anything like that, but it did phenomenally well. And I think there are a lot of really good board game war games out there that could be converted and could be done in a compelling and interesting way. Heroes of Normandy kind of bounced off me, not for any particular reason. I guess I just started playing it and I didn't really get it, and there wasn't anything that was drawing me in particular, but from an iOS perspective, I agree completely. There need to be more board games that are converted and put on iOS. It seems like a logical platform, right? You know, you've got that simple tabletop in front of you, and essentially the iPad is a tabletop, right? I was actually talking about this a bit to Alex Berry, who's a board game designer. He designed a new game that just came out called High Treason: The Trial of Louis Riel. And, you know, he was talking about how he just got that game. He just got Heroes of Normandy. He was traveling for work, and, you know, he fell in love with the game in minutes. And, you know, he thought it did a brilliant job of converting a board game to a computer game. And I don't disagree there. It's just, I guess the topic or the game itself didn't really resonate with me. And I don't know why. You know, it's not a bad game. It's well done. It's just, to me, it didn't resonate.
I think maybe because I played the board game version of it first. This is one of the first few board games that I fell in love with. Me and my buddy sometimes play this. But going back to Twilight Struggle, I haven't played that yet. Just to give you a heads up to our viewers or listeners, it was going through the Touch Arcade news, and I believe the game is dropping to $4.99 for Christmas. I think starting tomorrow, Eastern Standard Time, and they're coming out with an expansion pack for the game. I forgot what it's called, Midnight, something like that. Midnight.
I think I remember you telling me about that, and I think I've seen a few press releases about it as well. But yeah, I knew there was some DLC coming out for it. I don't remember the name. Wasn't it something to do with Khan or something like that?
Well, it something to do with like what if scenarios. What if the English, if Churchill got elected in 45, and then there was another what if scenario. It's basically like a what if expansion pack to Twilight Struggle.
Oh, Twilight Struggle. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Heroes of Normandy.
Oh, no. This one for Twilight Struggle, they're dropping the price, I believe, tomorrow, and then an expansion pack to it tomorrow too. And I believe it's coming out for Android.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that $4.99 drop because I mean, I haven't played Twilight Struggle, so that's probably why reason I didn't try it out. Because I haven't played the board game version of it. I picked up Here's Normandy right away because, you know, I played the board game version, and the digital version of it game is a very great representation of the actual, and it's very easy to use. Like, I literally picked up Here's Normandy, and I was worried that they were going to say, because it's a complex game. When you play the board game version, there's steps, and I was kind of worried that they were going to goof that up and say, all right, look, you got to do this, and it's going to take all the joy out of the game. But no, they did it pretty well. So I was pleasantly surprised. So since I got two of them, do you want to do your second favorite game of 2016?
Yeah, sure. And this one's going to rankle with you. I'm going to go with Hearts of Iron 4.
You know, that was close on my list.
Really? I thought in our episode when we talked about it, all you could do was rankle on it.
I mean, I still rankle on it, but you know, the one thing is, I was going through all the games that I played in 2016. And I said, you know what, 2016 wasn't a really good year. You know, I mean, we didn't get it wasn't a profound year for strategy war games because I expected a lot more for 2016. Here's Hearts Iron 4 and Civilization. Numerous games came out, and I was kind of underwhelmed. It's like developers not pushing the limits. They're dumbing down games, and you know. And I don't know if you. I was talking about this yesterday or the other day before with one of my buddies who's a board gamer, and we were talking about like. We just saw Star Wars, the recent film, Rogue One. And we were talking about like the beginning of the Rebellion, you know, and the strategy games that came out in the 90s. I don't know if you remember Star Wars Rebellion or Star Wars Battlefront or Battle. There was a game that came in, it was an RTS that came out in the 2000s. That was also good. And I've noticed like over the course of years, things are getting dumbed down.
I think it was Star Wars Empires at War or something like that.
That's it, yes. Star Wars Empires at War. That was a good game too. But I've noticed games are being dumbed down, or I'm not going to say dumbed down. I'm going to say casually focused. They're taking a lot of the complex parts of the game that in some cases made it fun, and just kind of like make it more tempting to the casual audience. Because I remember Star Wars Rebellion, which came out in '98. It was just one of the games that I fell in love with, and I still kind of perplexed why they didn't make a sequel to it. But if you take Star Wars Rebellion that came out in '98, where you're in charge of the rebellion, or you can control the Empire too, and your job is to kind of win the war, and the game would take hours and hours and hours to play. And you're controlling production and, armies and, key characters and making sabotage and diplomacy efforts. I mean, the game took weeks to play. And then you kind of compare it to recent Star Wars games with, the only strategy games that Star Wars has is on the mobile platform. I'm trying to remember what the name of the game is, but Galactic Conquest. It's on the App Store. It's one of the freemium games that they have for Star Wars, and I'm loading up my iPad, but I'll tell you that name in a second. But basically, I mean, it's basically Clash of Clans, but Star Wars. It's called Star Wars Commander or Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. Those are only two Star Wars games that you actually have, but they're so, they're so casually based. They're dumbed down in essence. And if you kind of compare Rebellion to these kind of Star Wars games, you can see the shift in paradigm from then to now. And I could see that with Hearts of Iron, and I could see that with Civilization. Everything is kind of being like taken away from the player in a way.
Maybe. I also wonder if some of it's also game designers are getting better at game design. And what I mean by that is, I think for a long time, war games have had a bad rap of being really poorly laid out in terms of the user interface. Games forever, and there's still games out there. And I don't mean this as a shot against any specific developers. But I think there's a lot of games out there that still feel like you're playing a Windows 95 game. And I think that's a real turnoff, and it's really hard to sell your game beyond a really small niche. If you have to click 500 times to do something, it's not very user-friendly. And I think sometimes, and I'll get into my thoughts on Hearts of Iron in a minute, I think sometimes when you streamline a user interface, to a lot of people, it feels like, whoa, you're taking everything out of the game. But you're not necessarily doing that. You may just be taking layers of obfuscation. I can't say that word, but you're taking layers of basically worthless interface out of the game and streamlining it. And sometimes you lose some detail. I think, for example, Hearts of Iron is probably a good example of that, where they streamlined the hell out of that game. And I think, in my opinion, that's one reason they did so well with it. I tried getting into Hearts of Iron 3, but it was like 25 mouse clicks to get into some basic commands, and I just, I could never really get into it. Hearts of Iron 4 was a game I had no real. It would be
solved by a simple GUI kind of fix. They change a few things, but like if I had to put and this will be like my number one top game for 2016. If I had to put like combining the complexity of like a Windows 95 game, from the 90s, and retaining a lot of that complexity, or I'm not going to say complexity, the scope of a big strategy war game where you hold on to that huge epicness, that scope, would be Stellaris. And Stellaris, a lot of people are going to be like, Stellaris, seriously, for number one? But the game has an incredible GUI interface. It's beautiful. You could pick up the game literally in minutes and be off and running. But the game is so huge in scope. You can assign individual commanders for your planets. You can you develop ships, design for ships, a massive tech tree. I mean, the game just goes on and on and on, and there's so much in there, including the diplomacy system, as well as research and all this other stuff, management, everything. There's so much stuff in that game for you to do. And it's complex in certain aspects, but it's also simple in many other aspects because you can hand over control for the AI. I feel like they did the right. Stellaris is kind of a good example of the way publishers should be making games of that kind of epic scope.
Yeah, I mean, with regards to Hearts of Iron, I guess to me, I came to it as a newbie to the Hearts of Iron series. And I think that probably colored my perceptions of the game. But, and I'm going to sound like the casual wargamer here, even though I play quite a bit of, War in the Pacific Admirals Edition. I play Commander, Modern Air Naval Operations. I play a lot of really hardcore war games. And to me, the ability to pick up and play Hearts of Iron 4 was impressive. It got me into the game. I started building my military machine. I started kind of figuring things out. And again, graphically speaking, gorgeously put together.
Oh, yeah.
User interface, ridiculously easy to use. As someone who was coming to the series for a first time, I thought it was brilliant. And I realized that, someone who was in the Hearts of Iron 2 and Hearts of Iron 3 games and was really into them, I think you could say that, okay, fine, it feels like they took some things out. They removed things like core commanders or whatever. I know you talked about it in length. We don't need to go into a full review of Hearts of Iron again. But I didn't feel like that missing out prevented me from having a fun game. What I did feel like was once you got into a war, it became more of a logistics and, economy simulator and less of a war game. But well, that may not actually be accurate to say. It became less of a tactics game. It became more of a top-down Eisenhower strategy game where you're saying, okay, these units move in this general direction, make this general offensive, and leave it up to the rest of the troops, which to me is fine because logistics is a war game. Like, logistics, you can't separate logistics and war. So you were really playing a logistics sort of economy game. And you weren't playing a core commander game where you're dealing with tactics. But to me, that was fine. Maybe I would feel differently if I had a long tenure with Hearts of Iron 3. But like I said, after I tried Hearts of Iron 4, and a lot of people were saying, Hearts of Iron 3 is better. I tried to jump into it, and it just kind of bounced off me. And I thought that the compromises that they made for Hearts of Iron 4 really flowed well for me. It still felt deep. Still felt challenging. I put 25 plus hours in. I know that's nothing compared to what a lot of people do, but and the multiplayer was just brilliant and a whole lot of fun. So as far as that's concerned, I thought it went well for me.
And I mean, I agree with you. The like, again, with the visuals, the GUI interface. There's certain things I didn't like about the GUI interface. Especially the what do you call it? There was there's a part in the game where you select focuses. I didn't like the focus tree. I thought that was kind of redundant. But I don't know. Going back to like the core commander thing, I mean that was, for me, that was a big issue. I don't know. It was gonna make my top 3, but I only got maybe 12, 13 hours in the game. It was, to me, as an old Hearts of Iron player, I just, I'm trying to, it just didn't satisfy me. The only game that really kind of satisfied me was Stellaris, because it did 4X space strategy the way it should be done. And they added a couple of cool things that I really enjoyed them adding, cool thing was, I remember I got some notification that there was, in the early part of the game, that there was some kind of seismic instability on one of my colonies, and I only had one colony, so I'm like, what are you talking about, seismic instability? So then another, I don't know, couple hours down the road, it said there are some life forms underneath one of your planets, and the citizens are starting to get paranoid. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What the colony? And I'm going back to the colony. And an hour later, they made contact with an alien life form underneath the planet that I had to develop diplomatic relations with. And, it sounds stupid, but this was really kind of cool because this is actual possibility. We could, you can colonize a planet, not know there are life forms there, and actually have to develop, diplomatic relations and kind of cohabitate that planet. And I was sending them relief supplies because they had some kind of, I don't know, starvation thing going on, and they were helping me out with some research. And honestly, stuff like that was really unexpected. And, it's things like that that made me really fall in love with Stellaris. But Hearts of Iron, I feel like I gave up more than I got, like you were saying, you're basically Eisenhower in the game, which is great. But to be honest, let's look at Eisenhower. Eisenhower had I'm not going to say boring job, but he was not on the front lines. He wasn't a Patton. He wasn't a Bradley where he says, all right, I need the Fourth Corps to swing around the left flank. I need the 101st to hold our front, our front line, and the 82nd is going to swing around the right, and we're going to, slam this German corps and take them prisoner or whatever. You can't do that because you're Eisenhower. You're just setting her up. I want you to go here, and then I'm going to handle the production. And it takes away some of that allure of the game, takes away that sweetness of the game, And
maybe for a game, I think you're selling Eisenhower a little bit short. I think, he may have had the most difficult job of anyone trying to get all these personalities to mesh and stay on point. But from a gaming perspective, you may be right. Again, I kind of take a game at what it's trying to accomplish. And for me, Hearts of Iron 4 was trying to accomplish that Grand Commander, simulation, and I think it did it. But we do have, I think it was episode 4. That's a full-on review of Hearts of Iron. So if anybody wants to check that out, you can hear more detail. It was in my top 3. I think you already said you had Ultimate General as your number 2. Did you want to talk any more about that?
No, I think Ultimate General is a game in development, so a lot of stuff can change. For right now, it's going to be my number 2. Now, if they make some changes, like the stuff that we talked about, it'll definitely slide up to number 1 for 2017. But for now, it would have to be on my number 2. I did want to mention stuff about. I didn't play this game, and I'm not sure if you played it, but Civilization, the latest Civilization game. I wanted to talk a little bit about that, primarily because, when a Civilization game comes out, it's a big thing. I mean, it's usually number 1 on Steam, and people are going to buy it. I mean, I believe it's number 1 on Steam from last time I checked was last night, and I didn't buy the game. I was considering. I was very strongly about to buy it, but I remember playing the first few Civilizations and then the ones down the line, and the games are not. I feel like a lot of these games, and Hearts of Iron could fall into this category.
I was going to say, if you think Hearts of Iron is too simple, I'm going to guess you're not a huge Civilization fan.
No, I like Civilization because I know what Civilization is. Like, Civilization kind of diluted a little bit in terms of control, but it gave you some other controls, like now, like the cities are now becoming like almost like states. So they added a few neat stuff, but I feel like you could only refine an idea so much. Like you have a computer, you could refine it to a certain point, and eventually you run into a wall. And that's basically what's happening with Hearts of Iron and Civilization and games like that. Because you could take the game, all right, and you can say, all right, well, let's add some beautiful visuals. We got that. And then let's add, this gameplay or touch up the UI and stuff like that and keep refining it. But they're not changing the scope of Civilization. And I'll give you a good example of Civilization is like, I was hoping that they would take the game to the next level. Like they changed the graphics in the game are absolutely beautiful. A nuclear bomb goes off and takes out an entire continent. There's a couple of times my finger was on the buy now button for just so I can get into that position of getting the game like that, just to experience stuff like that. But the scope doesn't change, and you take the Civilization from the caveman days to the modern day where you're blowing up the world, whatever, or maybe a diplomatic victory. But I was kind of hoping that it would take it to the next level, and the next level would be like, you go off world. Like I don't like games that end and just say, all right, by the way, this is the end of the game. You're done. Get out. And
didn't they just do that in the Civilization before this one? Not 5, but they had a. Was it 5? They had one that was off-world, and it was like some people said it was kind of trying to redo Alpha Centauri, which I don't know if you're a big, way back in the day Civ fan, but Alpha Centauri was basically Civilization on another planet, to my understanding. I never played it, but that's kind of. I've listened to other podcasts that are really into strategy gaming. I'll talk about 3 Moves Ahead, for example. That was basically Civ in space, Civ in another planet, and I thought the last Civilization did that.
It did. Well, I mean, it kind of did, but you're starting from scratch.
Was it Brave New World or
Brave New Worlds, I think, maybe.
Yeah,
it might be. I know they did one. I forgot the name of it. But...
It was like I guess it wasn't a whole new game, but I think it was it a DLC for Civilization 5? Something like that. But
the thing is like it doesn't connect. Like, for example, what I want is basically Civilization to start from the cavemen. You know, you're developing your nation. You get out into space. You find another habitable world. You develop a civilization there from, you know, the ground up. Not caveman days, but, you know, like from if we went to Mars, right? But still also having the ability to kind of govern your nation here.
Beyond Earth. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I was
kind of combining civilization with Stellaris and kind of going from the cavemen to all the way to the galaxy. You know, it would increase the scope of the game to a level that would say, holy crap, $60 for a game this epic in scope that I can play for years and still be on the first game. For me, that would have been the easy $60. I would have paid double for that. But I feel like once I get to the modern age, it's like, oh, it's end game, goodbye, let me start a new one. You know, and I kind of like a game that you know, if I put all that time and effort into it, I want it to go on. You know, it would make the game more. What's the word?
So basically, what you're looking for is an open sandbox, and every single strategy game you ever play, you just want an open sandbox.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, because when you play a game, right? Like, let's say you're playing Civilization, you play for 5 weeks, right? Or let's say a couple of months, right? And you make these crucial decisions. You know, I'll give you a good example. You start in 1936, and it takes you a decade to get to not a decade. I'm sorry. It takes you like 6 months to get to 1948, right? You made some critical decisions. You know, you're at the gates of Berlin, and the game ends, and you're like, oh, all right, that's it. Or what if they had an expansion pack that took you from, you know, you taking Berlin to now, okay, well, the game goes all the way up to 1989, and all those decisions that you made in the last, you know, 12 years are still part of the game, and now you're going to build upon that. You know, I just feel like once the game hits, you know, the end game, it's just like, all right, well, I can start the game from the beginning and kind of go through the whole spiel, or I can kind of go through other things like Cuban Missile Crisis or, you know, Korean War, Vietnam War. So this way my decisions build up, and my nation could be completely different from the current nation that we're at now, you know, and it kind of increases the longevity of the game, but also, you know, the value of the game, you know?
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. Although at the same time, I think a problem a lot of open sandbox games have is then there's no real accomplishment or direction. It's kind of like, okay, do whatever you want. There's no restraints on you whatsoever. And in my opinion, I lose interest in those right away because it's like I'm accomplishing things because I feel like it, not because there's any real objective there. And when I do something well, I guess I like that reinforcement of like, hey, you accomplished something. And with an open sandbox, it's, I guess the only accomplishment is up to your own, you know, what you define as an accomplishment.
But I think you make your own objectives in a sandbox. So, like, for example, like when I started the game in 1936, right? And let's say let's take two scenarios. The Spanish Civil War comes up, I think, in 36, right? And you have to decide, all right, what's my objective? If it's a sandbox game, you can say, all right, well, I want the United States to get involved because I don't want Spain to become fascist, and I don't want them to become a hindrance on democracy in Europe. So you get involved, you put your forces down. Now we'll take the opposite version of the game, where the game kind of gives you restrictive measures. The game says, all right, well, you can't get involved in Spanish Civil War because typically in history, the United States did not get involved in that. So you have to stay away. And I feel like in a sandbox game where you can make your own objectives, saying, well, I want to do this because if I was president at the time, I want to be able to do this because I feel it would be the right thing to do. I think that the point of strategy games is to kind of put you in the boots and say, all right, well, you're Stonewall Jackson or you're Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and you're given this situation. If you were president at that time, what would you do? And let's see if your way is better or more efficient. And then, you know, like let's say the game ends in 48 and, you know, Nazis have Washington, D.C. and you lost the mainland America, and you say,
you've been watching too much. You've been watching too much Man in the High Tower.
Yeah. I just finished the first season to that too.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I want to actually give it a go, but I haven't started it yet. I'm thinking maybe this week, this holiday week, will be the week I get into it. I hear you. I mean, to me, open sandboxes, I don't like defining my own objective. I guess it's less interesting to me than having something to strive for that's specific other than just min-maxing. But to come back to our oh, good Lord, I can't even think. Coming back to our best strategy games of 2016, you've kind of given your two. You've said Ultimate General Civil War, and you've said... oh my goodness, I can't remember. What was the first, the number 3 you had on the list? Heroes of Normandy, right?
Yeah.
And then I've had so far Hearts of Iron 4 and Ultimate General Civil War as well. I'm going to name a couple honorable mentions just because there are games that I feel like deserve being talked about. But for one reason or another, I haven't either had enough hours in them to really rank them, but I feel like they could be real gems there. I don't know if you have any honorable mentions yourself. But I'll just kind of run through them real quick, and then if you want to comment on it, you can, and if not, then we can go back into talking about our final game for each person. And I think I heard you; it might actually be the same game, so we may be talking about the same thing. But my honorable mention games, one of them is called Atlantic Fleet. It is a turn-based Battle of the Atlantic game that came out in early 2016. I was kind of digging deep and trying to figure out, okay, what did I play early in the year? Because, again, I worry that a lot of these lists turn into the best of 2016 since August. And, in my case, I was thinking back, what did I do a lot of? And I look back, and I'd done like 20 videos of this, I think, on my YouTube channel. And I really only played as the Germans. I didn't play as the UK. But I really enjoyed the hell out of Atlantic Fleet. And the reason is this. I don't think surface combat works in a turn-based environment, because it feels like a destroyer's rate of fire is the same as a battleship's. A 5-inch gun doesn't shoot the same, once every turn, and a 16-inch gun gets to shoot once every turn. There's differences there. And I didn't feel like they got armor penetration or hit points all that well, and that's what's kind of holding it off this list. But what I think they really did brilliantly is they finally made a game where it felt like you were fighting the Battle of the Atlantic, at least in the early years, whereas the Germans are trying to sneak surface raiders out into the Atlantic, but you've got to avoid British battleships, or, your submarines have got to track down these convoys, but, they can get through and you might not see them. To me, they brought a dynamic campaign to the Battle of the Atlantic for the first time I've ever seen it. I played a lot of Silent Hunter 3 when I was younger, and I love that game, but one of the things that frustrated me was it's dynamic for your sub only, and it makes sense. One sub is not going to end the Battle of the Atlantic, no matter how ridiculous your tonnage is, and you get 10 million, a million tons worth of shipping sunk or something crazy. You're not going to win the Battle of the Atlantic by yourself. But what I always wanted was that submarine game where you're a submarine in the Atlantic, but you command a flotilla, and you can kind of try and change the course of the war. This is kind of going down what you always want. And I felt like Atlantic Fleet did that for Germany. It made you decide, okay, we're going to send these subs out, we're going to do this, these are going to be our tactics, we're going to try and intercept these convoys, and it's not a one-time battle. It's a continuous sort of cat-and-mouse struggle. There's a lot that the game fails at. And again, I don't think the turn-based method is right for this kind of a game. But the effort that they put out there and the product that they put out there, it was a good product. It was a good game. It was fun. And the actual, the theme, the overarching theme of the Battle of the Atlantic, to me was, I was just pleased it was covered, and I would love to see it happen again. And I just wanted to give them their kudos for that. So I don't know if you played Atlantic Fleet all that much, but.
You talking about the one from Killerfish Games?
Yes.
Okay. I've watched videos of it. I haven't played it.
You better have watched my videos.
I know I watched a couple of videos. I might have been one of yours. But I remember I didn't decide to play it primarily because, the visuals on the game look beautiful. I remember from I'm going through the website now, but I remember the visuals on this game were really nice. But when I play games that involve like Atlantic or Pacific campaigns and stuff like that, whenever I play the game, I kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I kind of lust for a wider scope game. So, like for example, I'll play this, and I believe this game puts you like through like you have to play the Battle of Guadalcanal, right, and then the Battle of
No,
like,
this is so they have individual battles in the Atlantic. It's only the Atlantic, it's not the Pacific. But they have individual battles you can fight, but they also have a grand campaign where you just play weekly turns for the entire war.
oh, really? And you can go anywhere, like to Japan. You can decide on.
It's just the Atlantic, so it's the British versus the Germans, and then the American. The British versus, or sorry, the Germans versus the British, and then eventually the Americans.
Oh, okay, interesting. I might have to give it a shot. I mean, if it's kind of like PTO in a way, or Gary Grisby's or Matrix games.
No, it's more casual than that. I think it's actually on iPad as well. But it's just a fun game that I think they did well. There is a Pacific Fleet version of it also, but the dynamic campaign is what I really enjoyed. And again, it's not on my top games list, but it's certainly worth mentioning. I'll move on because I've got two others I'll just touch on real quick. One of the others is Naval Action, which is made by the same developers and publishers. It's made by Game Labs, which is the same company that makes Ultimate General. This game I've not played a lot of, so I don't have a ton to say other than it's a nostalgia trip for me because I played the hell out of Age of Sail back in the day. I don't know if you ever played the Age of Sail 2, Age of Sail Privateer's Bounty, but they were kind of the first games that ever got me into online play. And I joined a couple of clans and played, these sort of surface naval engagements from the Age of Sail, back in the Age of Napoleon. And Naval Action's trying to capture that. It's a little bit arcadey from what I've played. It's still in early access, and it's sort of this idea of this open world naval world in the Caribbean kind of. So it doesn't feel piratey. It feels more surface combat oriented, and it's gorgeous. So it's on my list only because of what it could become, not because I've experienced it as being a great game yet. But it certainly is one of those things where I see it and I'm like, I see the potential. I see what it could become. But I can't say it's the best of 2016 because, one, it hasn't fully launched, and two, it's there's still a lot of issues with it. But it's encouraging, and it's something that I would really like to see see improved upon, and I will definitely fall back into it at some point during 2017.
I remember, I've looked at Naval Action, and I've been trying to not guess, but I've been thinking, Naval Action didn't stir that much, how do I say, awareness or controversy as Ultimate General. When Ultimate General Gettysburg came out, there was so much discussion and excitement about that game. When they announced Naval Action, from the forums and from the community, I didn't see that much excitement or controversy or discussion about this game as much as Ultimate General. And I wonder if the reason why Naval Action generates so much excitement and awareness is that it resulted in the creation of Ultimate General Civil War. Because I figure Game Labs was doing Ultimate General Gettysburg. That was a runaway success, did incredibly well, made them a boatload of money. And he said, all right, well, let's do Naval Action because, maybe they just wanted to do that because they were looking forward to a game like that. And they started that game, but it didn't generate as much, excitement and people getting into it again. So they say, look, while we do Naval Action, let's create another game and a sequel to Ultimate General Gettysburg, which is Ultimate General Civil War. And, right now, Ultimate General Civil War is pretty much on every forum. It's on the top 20 in or 20 top 25 or whatever on Steam, and it's making waves and waves in the strategy game community. And I wonder, the game looks amazing. I know it's open world, and I was going to try it out, but, I don't know. I kind of stick to games that, maybe it's me, but I like, I like Civil War games. I love World War II games, World War One. Naval combat in, the 18th century or 19th century was not very appealing to me. I mean, it's great. We have the USS Constitution battles, but it's it never really appealed to me.
I've got a bit of an Anglophile fetish. I'm sure someone will pull that out and cut the audio out there and reuse it in a meme or something. But
nice, Jeff.
So I was a huge Horatio Hornblower fan when I was in middle school. We had to read Lieutenant Hornblower, which was the second book in the series by, I think it was C.S. Forrester was the author. We had to read that as a classic in our English literature class in middle school.
Wow.
Those books were brilliant, flat out brilliant. And I think I ended up reading like 10 of the Master and Commander series, which, they made a movie out of one of them, but it was like a 21-book series.
Oh, really?
And then I ended up, a year or two ago running into the Bolitho series and ended up reading like 10 of those. So I've got a thing for naval warfare in the age of Napoleon. It's sort of the last... It was not even the last. It was the age of heroic naval figures. You don't see that overarching brilliant naval commander in World War II. It's so technical. A lot of it's luck, but you don't see, it's not like Halsey saying we're going to break their line of battle and we're going to do something dramatic. It's almost like World War I was that last time period where you could have a just brilliant naval commander who could go in and say, here's what we're going to do, and it's going to be successful. With some pretty big figures in Scheer and Jellicoe. But I feel like as naval warfare became more and more technical, as there were more and more gadgets and the distance between the ships became greater and greater from a simulation perspective and from a gaming perspective, and this isn't to take anything away from Command Modern Naval Operations because I love it, but it's almost like modern naval combat is a tech demonstrator, and you take away the admiral as a heroic figure. And I think Napoleonic naval combat was that era where the admiral was really, he was the hero that you could relate with, that you could play, that you could game. Not in a way of, here we're going to win the scenario, which I think is more of what combat, naval operations is, but in a way of, you can RP it, you can role play it, and you can make one specific central figure the hero. And I think that was the pinnacle of it all, was in Napoleonic combat. And to me, that's what really appeals to it, is this idea of this one brilliant individual leading a force to victory. And again, Naval Action it's got a lot of flaws. There's been a lot of games out there that are like Pirates games that are kind of, I played a lot of Port Royal and other things like that. They're okay, but they're not really naval war games. And it kind of feels like Naval Action could become that, but then it's also got a trade aspect. It's almost like a better comp for it might be, oh my god, I can't think of that space game that was all over the news for all those really expensive space battles. Eve, yes. It could be like an Eve of like naval warfare almost. And I kind of feel like maybe that's the direction they're trying to go. And you're right, it hasn't generated as much press or publicity, but I do think it's worth calling out that even though they're the same developer in Game Labs, the development teams are completely separate.
Oh, really?
The people developing Ultimate General have nothing to do with Naval Action, and the two games were developed in parallel. Naval Action feels like a lot bigger risk for Game Labs. It's a really expensive-looking game that I imagine costs them a lot of money to develop, so they probably have to sell way more copies than Ultimate General does to be successful. If you just look at, the production quality behind it. It's just, again, it's not a game I want to talk about for 20 minutes. It's a game that I have a lot of hope for and that I really want to see succeed because I personally love Napoleonic naval combat. But as far as a best of, it's not there yet. It's got a lot of flaws. But it's something that reminds me of Age of Sail. And it's the closest thing I've seen to Age of Sail in a long time. So I really hope it's successful. And it came out this year, so that's why I wanted to talk about it. But again, it's just an honorable mention. And I will say the third honorable mention on this list, I think, is just because I didn't just start playing it till this week. And that is Strategic Command. Strategic Command World War II War in Europe, I think, is the full name. It's a Matrix Slytherin game. It's made by Fury Software. And it's a kind of the newest iteration in the Strategic Command series. It starts in September of 1939. It puts you in charge of either the Axis or the Allies. And the thing that's really encouraging to me about this game is and again, I work on the Scourge of War games, so this isn't meant as a knock against any war games, but I think in general, when you see war games, and a lot of times these are games that are put out Slytherin and Matrix, you see kind of outdated user interfaces, and I think a lot of war game companies will acknowledge that can make games very difficult to get into, and I know that was a big effort with Scourge of War, the last one, Scourge of War Waterloo, where we were really trying to make the game easier to pick up and play. Still really deep. I don't think anyone would say Scourge of War Waterloo isn't a deep game. But we were trying really hard to make the game simpler to pick up and play. And this seems to be the overarching theme of my list. Maybe I should rename my list, the easy to play games. But as far as Strategic Command is concerned, it was another game that the user interface for a Slytherin and Matrix game, it's brilliant. The tooltips are clear, the game is well designed, it's easy to play, and yet it's deep. There's a lot of strategy to figure out what units am I going to buy, how am I going to take over Poland and make sure that, I'm set up to invade Western Europe. I haven't put enough hours into this game to put it on my list. I've only played it for like 5 hours, but it is another game that I just love. And thus far, it may be a recency bias, maybe another one of those games where it's like, I love it because I've only played it for 5 hours. But so far, I love it, and the user interface is brilliant, and the game is beautiful, and it's everything a grand strategy World War II European game should be. As far as I can tell, there's some things I think would be kind of cool if I could, manipulate production or not production, but manipulate like industrial output or focuses on the economy. But overall, for a kind of easy to pick up and play game, which is what it's trying to be, I think it does a really good job.
And I agree with you. I mean, I've been playing Strategic Command quite a bit lately. I've been trying to get it in, but I actually just came out with the 4K video of it, which was really tough to render out.
You and your 4K.
I'm getting in. I'm becoming a big advocate of 4K. Been a lot of my tech reviewers that I follow online, like MKBHD and Austin Evans, they're going crazy with 4K. So I guess I'm getting involved in that. But yeah, I mean, Strategic Command reminds me of a game that I play a lot of, which is, I feel like it's an offshoot of Commander of the Great War, and I play this a lot on my iPad. This came in handy when I was moving, and I drive a lot between here in New York and Brooklyn, constantly going back and forth, see my family and stuff like that up there. So I only bring my iPad with me. So, I don't have a laptop. So I usually play Commander of the Great War because, the game is, takes you through the whole World War I. And I feel like Strategic Command is kind of like, all right, well, we did World War I. Now Strategic Command is going to take you through World War II. And it's a great game. I hope, I put this on, I think my review or first impressions of the game, that I hope they come out with a tablet version of the game because I would buy it instantly. The one thing that I do want them to see done in Strategic Command and Command of the Great War, there's something that's missing in those both games. And this kind of tells me that, and this is another reason why I feel Strategic Command was kind of inspired from Command of the Great War, was because the diplomacy systems are exactly the same in that they're literally non-existent. The only thing you can do in this game is, I believe, declare war. That's all you can do. You can select another country, declare war. That's it.
I think that might be more true for Commander of the Great War, but that's not true for Strategic Command. So Strategic Command has a diplomacy system where you invest diplomacy and you have a certain number of chits, which I guess are kind of like a diplomat or something like that. And you can send, as Germany, for example, you can send up to 5 chits into one country or multiple countries, and it costs a certain amount of money, and you get a certain percentage chance that you'll swing them one way or the other to the Axis or the Allies. So it does have diplomacy. It's very rudimentary. It's an arithmetic game, but it's there.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I didn't even I noticed that system where you can invest, and in my head I was just like, all right, what am I investing in? I'm not going to put money into something that I don't know what I'm getting back, because I didn't see any options there where I'm kind of like looking for obvious selections, like, ask nation for war subsidies, or ask for military access, or ask for alliance, or clear and precise diplomatic overtures that I can say, all right, well, if I invest 100 influence or whatever amount of money into Sweden or Norway, if I give them 100 per turn, that they will swing my way, and I can then ask them for military access, position troops there, and get them to join the Allies, and then invade through Denmark and then back into Germany. I don't see an avenue I can pursue that in this game. And that was the only thing that I had a problem with the game with. Everything else is, great in that game. I really enjoy that game, and I play it a lot because of that. A few other things I think they could have done better in Strategic Command is share this research systems. I noticed the research systems are different. Like Great Britain is at a different level of research than France, and France is at a different level of research than USA. I feel like if you're all part of the Allies, that you're sharing technology. Like in Hearts of Iron, U.S. can share technology, give tactical bomber technology of B-24 Liberators to England, and here's the specs. You can make your own variations, and I mean we've done that. We shared research and technology with our allies in World War II, and I feel like maybe they should incorporate that into this game instead of me having to, as France, invest in infantry, and then U.S. invest in the same infantry technology. It's kind of redundant, because we're all allies.
We kind of did and we didn't, though. Like the Norden bomb site, and please, someone comment or whatever on this in the chat or what have you if I'm wrong. But the Norden bomb site's a good example of where we didn't share technology, where these devices that were in American bombers were so highly classified, and the technology that was behind them was so highly classified. They had an individual, at least early in the war, who was whose sole responsibility was to guard over these sites, and we didn't share them with the British. I think at some point we may have offered to, and they kind of discounted it. But I think if you look at World War II, while you're right, there was some technology sharing, it was certainly not as uniform as it may sound. Like if you were to say, okay, you've researched this technology, therefore everyone in the Allies should have it, I don't think that would accurately model World War II. Let's just look at the bomber force. The British used the Lancaster bomber, they used the Wellington bomber, they used the Mosquito kind of attack bomber, and the Americans used the B-25, they used the B-26, the B-27, B-24. There was no sharing of designs or technology there. The British certainly did on tanks. They used a lot of American Shermans, but at the end of the day, for the most part, both sides kind of had their own technology and their own equipment, with a few exceptions.
The overall design, but I feel like individual things, like probably at radar, I believe we share. I mean, I know like the core designs, like we had B-17s, they had Lancaster bombers. Like the overall design of it, they're like, they designed their own specific bomber to fit according to their needs. But I feel like the interior technology inside there, like radar or navigational equipment, I believe we shared that, didn't we? Like in terms of how to better improve our planes, even though they were different models, we shared the internal technologies that, right?
Maybe I'm not quite sure if that's true or not. I know the British had very classified, at least early on, radar bombing that they didn't share, but it didn't really matter because we didn't do night bombing. So I'm not sure on that. We didn't directly share the atom bomb. We shared some stuff about it, but not everything about it. It was very classified. So again, I'm not 100% sure, but things like radar, I mean, by the time the U.S. got involved, Britain had developed radar before anyway. Germany eventually developed radar. The U.S. had radar, but I don't think it was really shared. I think it was just a lot of sort of mutual development along the same lines at the same time. I could be wrong. I mean, maybe there's a book out there that details, hey, here's a specific example of the U.S. giving things to Britain. I'm sure we did it to some extent. I just don't think a straight, hey, you've developed this technology or this item, now your allies should have it, would necessarily accurately reflect the way World War II was fought. And the other thing I would say is that you're right, maybe technologies were shared, but whether they're shared or not, the individual designs weren't, for the most part. And if you're trying to simulate a war game, and most of these high-level grand strategy games, it's not like you're saying you have the M4 tank, therefore here are your specific traits, especially not in Strategic Command. It's you have a medium tank with this level technology, with this level, infantry weapons or whatever. If you were to say all allies get all the same technology, then everyone would be using the exact same units with the exact same characteristics, and that would not represent World War II at all. The Lancaster bomber for the British was phenomenal. Way heavier payload than the American B-17s. The Americans didn't match until the B-29 came out. So if you were to say just because the British have developed this technology, now the Americans could have it, to me that doesn't reflect the way World War II was really fought.
Yeah, but I feel with this game, this game is not more of a... I feel like this is more of a casual strategy game. It's not... this game is definitely not like Hearts of Iron. It's not meant to be. It's not meant to be like as sophisticated. Well, you have the Lancaster bomb, we have the B-17. I feel like this game is like, all right, you have infantry, you have tank, you have artillery, and then you have bombers. And I feel like they're all, once you reach that level, they're all the same. I don't see that much. I don't feel like that there's much difference in this game. It's more of a casual, like, hey, play World War II during your lunch break kind of game. Well, not lunch break, but maybe extended lunch break or whatever it may be. But it's none of a Heart to Iron type of game. It's not meant to be to play for weeks and weeks.
You may be right, but what I will also say is what the game does that I haven't seen any other game do as well is the way it models convoys. So the British get income every turn, but a certain percentage of that comes from like 3 or 4 different convoy routes from different parts of the empire. And if the Germans put, warships or submarines along that convoy route, the British get penalized. And I think that's brilliant. I haven't seen another grand strategy war game do that, and I don't know why, but I think they do that amazingly well. And that alone is enough. Again, I guess I've got this thing for the Battle of the Atlantic, but that bit alone is enough for me to say, this game is doing something new that I haven't seen any other strategy game do it, and I want to say, yes, let's reward that. I want to see more of that in strategy wargaming.
Yeah, the game, honestly, Strategic Command, I would have to agree with you. I would say, if I had to put like the top 4, that would be my 4th pick for a strategy game. Now, had they put, once they put it on for, because I know they're going to do this, once they put it on the iPad, that'll probably be one of my favorite games for 2017. And I know that's kind of, a lot of people are going to be like, well, just because they put it on a tablet. But for me, when you put games on a mobile platform, it changes the way I play that game. There's only a certain amount of time that I get to come home. I usually do school and fire department and everything. By the time I come home, I'm literally like exhausted. I have a hard time getting to my computer, sitting down, turning on the iMac, and then, booting up the game. Usually I just crawl into bed, turn on my tablet. If I could play 20 or 30 minutes while I'm laying down, while my eyes are closing, that's what I'll do. And, that it really, for them to put games on a mobile platform, it definitely, for me, it enhances that game and it gives it a lot more longevity for me, at least.
Yeah, no, again, these are just kind of my honorable mentions. I think Strategic Command does a lot of interesting things. I enjoy it. I've only put like 7 hours into it, so I can't really say, oh my god, this is the best game of 2016 for me. So that's why it's falling into the, honorable mention. But now that we've gone through my honorable mention, I don't know if you have any you wanted to mention that aren't in your top 3?
I was going through this over and over, going back and forth, trying to figure out like which games really stuck out that I was playing over throughout the whole thing. The only thing I can think of is that kind of caught me, and it's not a really a war kind of or a strategic war game kind of thing. It was RimWorld is probably the only game that kind of surprised me a little bit.
I bought that, but I haven't played it yet.
Yeah, the scope of the game, the amount of stuff you can do in the game is really cool. I like that. I'm not gonna put it on my top 3 because to be honest, I love war games. I love fighting wars and stuff like that. And RimWorld's a little bit different. It doesn't cover that. I can't think of. There's a couple of games that I have planned that I was going to review. It's in my wish list on Steam, and I was actually planning to play it over the next week. But for right now, no, unfortunately not. A lot of, 2016 for me, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to get upset. It kind of was a little bit of a disappointing year. I was kind of expecting a lot more from a lot of games, but the closest thing that I would say is maybe that gets within the realm of being an honorable mention would probably be Civilization. And the only thing that I can think of in that game that incorporates that is that they changed the way the cities are run, in terms of like adding tiles and that, adding suburbs and stuff like that, and the way you position buildings and stuff like that. But, I'm not playing $60 for a game because, well, you add tiles to cities now and you can expand the way where markets are made or libraries are made. And honestly, when you add a number to a game like Hearts of Iron 4 or Hearts of Iron 5 or, Civilization 5 or 6, I want something big. I want something remarkable. I don't want just, hey, we added, we changed the graphics and we added some nifty, cool units. It just doesn't do it. You have to change the way the game is run. You have to not change the way poor choice of words, but you have to make the game more alluring. For me to spend another $60 or another $70 or whatever it may be, you have to add a key functionality to the game that's just it incorporates me. And a lot of these games have not done that. Stellaris was the only one that was like, wow, this game is actually really kind of cool because of those little special events and finding these founders of the universe, and I'm trying to find these spots throughout the universe. So I have to make diplomatic alliances with these other. It got me immersed in the games. There's very few games that.
Well, before we talk too much about that, so what was your number one game then?
Stellaris, I would have to say.
Okay, now that we've talked about it already for like 10 minutes. So what made it your number one game? Because it is the only other game left on my list. I didn't put it as number one per se, but of my top 3 games of 2016, I have Stellaris, Hearts of Iron, and Ultimate Generals. So we're going to share that as our final game. Why don't you talk about what made it the best game to you?
I like Stellaris because I don't even know how to. What's the proper pronunciation of that game? Is it
Stellaris, Stellatos? Yeah. I don't
know. The thing about Stellaris is I'll say Stellaris, but I would say and I repeated this numerous times is the scope of the game. I mean, the game. You're starting out with one system, which is Earth or whatever race you choose, and you're developing your military. There's also like I was playing the humans, so there's like a covert kind of faction that's trying to take over my government, setting up, running into another alien species, and little things that they do is like you have to put research points or something like that to kind of develop a diplomatic dialogue with that nation. Like you run into an alien race, they're not going to speak English. You're not going to say, hey, how you doing? Vulcans, and oh, you speak English. That's kind of quaint. You run into with the Vulcans. You actually have to invest research to kind of figure out, hey, we got to figure out what they're talking about because they're talking something we don't understand.
How do you know they won't speak English?
Well, we don't have the universal translator yet, unless you stole it from the Enterprise. But it was that I meant, going back to the other thing where I had that colony, and there was a life form on that colony that I didn't even know existed, and it took me like 5-6 hours to kind of say, holy crap, there's something else living on this freaking world that I put my first colony on. Thankfully, they were peaceful, which was kind of cool. I haven't figured this out because I haven't played Stellaris in a couple weeks or maybe a month or so. But I'm wondering if they implemented this game, this is going to take Stellaris to another level. What I was kind of hoping that they did in this game is you run into these primitive races. You run into this planet and they got like primitives, like cavemen, and they kind of what's the word I'm looking for? They kind of accelerate. They go from cavemen to Renaissance to medieval, to colonial to modern, and they go through like phases. And I was kind of hoping that they become their own race at one point, and I could develop diplomatic relations with them, and they become like their own empire, and I have to kind of work with them. I'm hoping I run into that during the game, but I like the uncertainty of the game. I'm going to these different planets. I find a race on there. I can't colonize that because I'm kind of doing like a Minnetonkan kind of interventionist, one of the Star Trek episodes. Running into other races. Combat is really done well in the game. I like diplomacy. It could be done a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, honestly, when I'm playing the game, it feels so epic. Like this game, I feel like I mean, the game I believe is like $40. So for $40 game, you could literally start the game and play every single day and not be done for like 8 months, a year. You can stretch this game so long. And I like that because for $40, I mean, that's a great buy. I mean, how many games right now you can get on Steam that are $60 and you play it and you're done in 3 hours and you're like, wow, that was $60. That just killed 3 hours.
Not many strategy games, but yes, you're right. I mean, you're talking like Battlefield or Call of Duty or most of those kind of mainstream AAA titles. But what I will say about Stellaris, because you're gushing over it, and I love it as well. I hate to make this comparison. I don't like saying like, oh, it's a better version of this, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm a hypocrite. It's like it's a better version of, or not, I won't say better. It's a newer version of Distant Worlds. And it's a more polished version. Distant Worlds is brilliant. I love the game. I haven't spent enough time in it as I would like. What's interesting is, to me, strategy gaming seems to have this huge segment, this almost mainstream-sized segment of 4X space gamers. And they don't touch war games for whatever reason. Like, I don't think most people would say Stellaris is a war game. But the people who buy Stellaris, who buy Distant Worlds, who buy Sins of a Solar Empire, some of them, there's some crossover there. But it doesn't seem like a lot of them ever will venture into a Scourge of War, or will venture into maybe an Ultimate General. But for the most part, these are people who are really into epic space 4X games. And I think Stellaris, to me, is the newest and the best version of a 4X space game that I've seen. Distant Worlds is brilliant. It's incredibly detailed. I love how you can let the AI take over. But the user interface is a little bit clunky. And that's, to be fair, the game is, like 5 or 6 years old now, maybe longer. It holds up really well. When Distant Worlds went on Steam, what was it, like 2 years ago? It was in the top 10 for like 3 weeks. Which is phenomenal for a game like that. Again, it kind of reiterates this point of 4X space games being their own genre in of itself. But Stellaris is incredibly polished. It's like EU in space.
Yeah.
And it's open-ended and ginormous. And if you ever wanted to play a game, to your point, you're always harping on, like, I want this open-ended game where I control the fate of my future, and I can do whatever I want, and, I can build my fleet and expand and do whatever I want. Stellaris is like the perfect game for you, right? Like, in terms of all of that. Except it's in space. And to me, it's a great game. The one thing that caused me to hesitate to put it on the list, because I agree with everything you've said so far. So I don't want to reiterate and rehash everything you've said and kind of bore people with like, oh, he's saying all the same things. My one hesitation is the late game. The early game is brilliant and exciting and interesting, but as you kind of move into the middle game and you move toward the late game, which to me is hard to say, like what's really the late game in this kind of a game? Do things get stagnant? Because what I found myself doing a lot of was playing for like 10 hours and then restarting, and playing for like 10 hours and restarting. And I don't know if I ever quote-unquote won a game. And I think to me the interest of like spreading out and spreading your tentacles and building this space empire is what was really interesting. And it seemed like they had some Crusader Kings elements as well, where you've kind of got some limitations on how many planets you can directly control yourself when you have to start up these like, sectors, if you will, and I'm sure I'm getting the name wrong. but you've got, a certain limitation on how much you can effectively control directly, and then you've got to start kind of delegating. At least that was my experience with the game. Which I think is really well done, and I think it really applies. And I hope there's, to me, it's almost like the link between a medieval empire where you're kind of expanding, but it's all family based, and you've got to kind of start delegating out. And then there's this whole issue of succession or whatnot that really fit well with a space game. But I don't know how strong the middle to end game is. Because again, every time I played the game, I played for like 5 to 10 hours, and then I would restart because I was like, oh, let's try something new. I guess I don't know what's your take on the end of the game.
I don't think I'm there yet because I committed numerous hours to the game, but I set up the game to have like the largest universe. So, and I think the largest amount of empires. So everybody's fighting over each other, and I'm just kind of like a little sliver on one of the parts of the galaxy. So, the thing about like the end game is it's so far down the line. Like right now.
So what you're basically saying is this is like any of those gigantic ultimate board game war games that take like 6 months to play and like 300 human hours, and no one knows how they play out because no one ever gets there.
But like that's if you wanted to. Like right now, like I chose Stellaris with the largest galaxy and largest amount of empires and stuff like that because I want it to last 8 months, a year, 2 years. Now I can easily choose, small galaxy, 5 empires, and be at the late game in probably like a few hours, and have the game probably be done by the end of the week, or maybe even like a few days. I could do that. That's one really cool thing I love about 4X strategy games is you can determine how fast the game goes. Like Civilization, you can choose small world, start at the colonial period and 3 empires. Chances are you'll probably be done with the game that day if the amount of hours you put in. But I like games that say, all right, you can do this. You can be done with the game now, or you can be done, a year from now. It's your choice. You decide what you want to do. And, the more choices that they give you, I feel the more replayability and also the longer the game is. Like Stellaris, $40. I mean, think about it. I mean, if you start the game now, you max out everything, the amount of star systems, all that stuff. You can play the game from now all the way probably to the end of 2017, probably finish this time by the end of 2017, your first game. And think about it. That's a pretty good deal for $40.
Oh, no, it's a great deal. I guess I don't know why I brought up Distant Worlds because I still play that game as well. And I think they're both great games. They're both great values in my opinion. But you're right. In terms of Stellaris, what you're paying, what you're getting, it's a great game. I guess I was just thinking like it's almost like a war in the Pacific where, so few people ever reach 1945 that it's hard. I guess I'm just thinking from like a developer's perspective, how the hell do they test that, right? Because you think about it, and they're probably testing the hell out of the first 5 to 10 hours of gameplay. But are they really having any testers being like, let's see what it's like 20, 25 hours in or 30 hours in or whatever? I mean, like as a game, if you've got... Think about it. Paradox isn't a AAA studio. They're a big company in terms of strategy game. They're like the AAA company, but they don't have 50 guys to test the game for 30 hours each. They got other things they got to do. So I kind of wonder. I've seen some criticism of Stellaris, and I personally don't have a lot of critiques of it. I've enjoyed the hell out of it. I just wish I had more time to dedicate to it. But I've seen some critiques of it where the people feel like the game gets stale, and I just wonder, as a developer's concern, like, is that an issue, or is it just because realistically, these games got to be impossible to test, and that's neither here nor there. That's not for this stream or not for this episode, but it just the inner product developer in me is thinking like, how the hell do they figure out how to test that or plan for that?
But
yeah.
I can't imagine how they tested out Stellaris. Obviously, they probably can get to the end game, but War in the Pacific, that's a game that requires. But I like that because like let's say, and this is not going to be me or you, but like let's say you get like 2 months free, let's say for the summer or whatever, maybe let's say, you decided to take a couple of months off a sabbatical, and you just kind of want to like focus on one thing, nothing like relevant, nothing work. You just want to take 2 months off and play a game because, you need a break or whatever it may be. I like knowing that there are games out there where I can say, you know what, I'm going to spend the next 2 months worrying about beating the Japanese in War in the Pacific or becoming the best empire in Stellaris because there's too much shit going on in my regular life. I need a break. Let's do this and get warped in it, get kind of invested in it. And I like that. Can
you talk to my boss, please? Because I would love 2 months off just to play games. That would be great. I would love it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think my school, my fire department would like that either. But
I'm sure my boss would be like, "Sure,
you need a midlife crisis."
I'm sure my boss would say, "Yes, if you want 2 months off, that's fine. Just give us your 2 weeks notice, and you can have as many months off as you want." But in all seriousness, like I love my job and love my. I'm not just saying this. Like I've got a great boss, but anyway, I'm holding a.
Just in case they're listening.
No, I'm serious. Like I know a lot of people have had horror stories about their real life work, and I will say that fortunately, knock on wood, I have not had that. The company I work at has been great. I've been there for like 6 years, and they just treat you amazingly. But anyway, no one cares about that. So I guess in closing. You love Stellaris. I love it. I feel bad because I don't have a ton to contribute because I just kind of agree with everything you've said. Any closing thoughts about your favorite games or anything like that? I guess, you know what maybe we should do for our next episode is do a like most anticipated games of 2017 because we're just a couple weeks away recording this now. By the time we record our next episode, it'll probably be like the first week of January or like the last week of December. So we probably want to talk about what we're really looking forward to. Which is, I was thinking about that, and one thing that I think bothers me about strategy, more specifically war games, is I don't think they do a great job of marketing to say, like, hey, this game is coming. I feel like all the time these games just pop up out of nowhere, and it's like, well, wait a minute, like, how, what? No one, I didn't know this was coming. And I feel like they don't do a great job of building any kind of buzz or knowledge that this game is around the corner, and I think that makes it harder for them when they release the game, because so often, especially on Steam, what you sell that first week is so critical to if the game's going to be successful. Because if it sells a lot, it'll stay in the top, 20 list or whatever. But if it doesn't and it falls out of that list, you're screwed. Like if you fall out of that top games list or top new games or anything like that in the first 2 days after you launch, like how the hell is anyone going to find your game? I mean, I don't know. I don't have game sales figures, but I've heard enough indies talk about it that like being on that first page of Steam is so important that, I think strategy games do themselves a disservice, specifically war games, in terms of getting that knowledge out there. So it's any list where we say like, what's our most anticipated games of 2017 is really hard to be accurate about because so many games don't get announced until like Ultimate General is a great example. Came out into early access like 5 days after they said it was coming out. No one had even heard about it. What the hell is up with that?
Well, there's a couple of like, believe it or not, I'm one of those people that I literally go through Steam and I try to find hard to find Civil War, Cold War games. I found a few of them that I'm actually planning to make videos on, and one's on the Cold War, and it's actually on Steam now. I'm planning to do a video on it. But, what it really comes down to is, if they make the game and they get it out to the right audience. And the right audience would be, you, me, Pocket Tactics, Wargamer.com. Get it out to these people. Say, hey, listen, I have this game. Would you be interested in reviewing it? They do it. Just accelerated your game to a couple thousand people. If it goes on Pocket Tactics, obviously Wargamer picks it up. Wargamer picks it up, then me and you will see it. We do a review on it, and vice versa. If you get it, I'll see it. I'll do a review on it. Pocket Tactics will get it. And all they have to do is reach one. If you want to make a game yourself and say, hey, look, I'm never going to be in the top 10 or top 20 of Steam, you don't have to be. Just get it to the audience that would focus on the audience that you want. So you make a strategy game right now on American Revolution. Get it to Matt here, right? Matt will do a video on it. I'll see it. I'll say, wow, that's a really cool game. Let me play it and give my thoughts on it. Pocket Tactics will see it and say, hey, yeah, let's do a review on it. Before you know it, you have a couple $1,000s in the bank, and you just got to focus your market. That's what they need to do.
Yeah, although, I mean, we could probably do a marketing video for strategy games as well. That might be a worthwhile podcast or something like that. But yeah, at the same time, I think it's easier if they announce it publicly, because I get so many emails of like, hey, this game's coming out, do you want to cover it? And admittedly, a lot of them don't really apply. They're kind of like freemium games that aren't really strategy games, that are just like weird sort of cash grab attempts. But even some interesting games like similar or something like that for the PC. But I've gotten a couple that like, I think Cossack's 3 sent me like 10 emails before I realized, like, oh, wait a minute, like, this is, I should probably cover this. This is like a game that looks interesting. War of Rights has been emailing me a ton to be like, hey, let's do something, and I want to do something, but the public effort to like get out there and be like, hey, this is coming. I feel like War Rights is different, but in general, I just feel like you do yourself no service as a developer to announce a game a week before you launch it. You need to do something. You need to have a go-to-market plan. And it makes me wonder, with the massive influx of games on Steam, if self-publishing is going to die, because for a while there it was like you had to have a publisher because you had no outlet to be sold without one. Then Steam came along and started accepting more games, and it was like, okay, anybody can get in, get their game up, probably if you get greenlit, but that system wasn't that difficult to get through for a lot of games, and the massive influx of games, and everybody gets their games out there, and Steam is huge, so you're going to be successful. And now I kind of feel like it's, holy crap, there's this massive swamp of shit, and, now you've got, no chance as an individual to get out there and get exposed. You have to go back to having a publisher. And I just feel like games could do a better job of saying, like, hey, this is coming out, get excited about it. I think the Atlantic Fleet guys, they've got a game coming out, I assume it's next year, about the Cold War. It's kind of like a Red Storm Rising game, and they've done a really good job of trying to build hype ahead of release. And, I'll say Matrix doesn't do a great job of that. I think Matrix games could do a much better job of trying to get, publicity about some of their games coming out ahead of time. I think some of their game developers have done a better job of it. The guys who made, the guy who made their Vietnam game has announced a couple of games that I think are coming out next year. Afghanistan 11 and then Carrier Deck, which both look really interesting. And, they're a little bit more casual, admittedly, but they're announcing it before, more than a week before it comes out. And unless you're scouring their beta list, it's just, I don't know. It's another topic for another time, but I think we should do a video on most anticipated games of 2017. And I'm rambling at this point, but I think we should do that for maybe our next episode, if you agree.
I agree with that. Yeah, that would be kind of cool, and we can give some tips and such. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry for that, like 10 to 15 minute rant. You got all your ranting in on Stellaris, so I had to add something.
I do have to mention one thing. So I told you guys in the beginning that. Twilight Struggle will be, half price, $4.99. I just checked the App Store; it is $4.99, starting right now Eastern Standard Time on the iPad. So if you want it, it's half price for Christmas, and I'm planning to actually buy it right now.
Nice.
Gotta love the Christmas sales.
I need to get that on my iPad. I've got it on my computer, and I've been playing Alex. I mentioned Alex Berry. Actually, we should have him on. I don't know if you're interested in doing board games at all. I know this is kind of off the cuff, but. I think there would be some interesting games worth talking about as well. To me, it seems like there's a growing stable of board games, and it seems like there's a lot of people who are really into board games, and some of the games you really enjoy, like Heroes of Normandy. It was on your list as originally a board game. I think it'd be cool to have some developers on, and I'm I don't know if I'd say friends with him, but I went to high school with a good friend of his, and we chat quite a bit actually on Facebook. So, we should look at getting some developers on from time to time, whether they're board game developers or war game developers or PC game developers. I think that would be kind of an interesting thing to do some interviews as well.
Yeah, I'm down for that. I will have to talk about that after, on the after show, setting up the time and such like that. Cause,
sure. Yeah, 12 a.m. Central Standard Time may not be the best time to get a developer out.
Yeah, and then I have like during the during the week. I usually I'm working all the way to like 8 and such. So we'll have to kind of like arrange times and stuff. I had talked to them and such.
Yeah, I mean, we can worry about the details. I'm just saying, it's sort of like at some point we should probably do it, or it could be interesting. I know you used to do a lot of interviews or whatnot on the Strategy Wargamer, so I think it's something worth exploring, and I think people would probably enjoy it. But at this point, we've kind of gone into the after show in the main show, so I suppose we should probably move on from our rambling. What I will say is, the last couple of weeks we've neglected this. We're the Single Malt Strategy podcast, and yet I feel like the last 2 or 3 episodes we haven't talked about anything that anyone's drinking.
Yes, I noticed. Yeah, I noticed that. So what you've been drinking?
Well, right now, so I just got back from Puerto Rico. So I think I mentioned that at some point. And right now I'm drinking some rum. So I actually just spilled some on my desk. Got a little bit close. Got a little bit close to my keyboard, a little uncomfortable. I shorted one out by spilling some water on it a couple of weeks ago. But I'm drinking Trigo Reserve NJ. I'm not sure. It says the rum of Puerto Rico. And it's kind of a blend of Puerto Rican rums. I think it's more of a touristy rum thing, but it's a blend of Puerto Rican rums. I spent a week there on vacation, and it's pretty good. I don't, normally I'm drinking more Scotch, but it's definitely a spiced rum, and it's interesting. But that's what I'm drinking right now. It's I think I've only ever seen it in Puerto Rico, so that makes me feel like it's a touristy thing where it's like, hey, buy this Bacardi that's relabeled as something else because now you think it's unique.
For me, I've been I don't know. Well, tonight I've been drinking England because I've been trying to. I've been going around. I've been having like a beer phase lately. So I started with I used to drink a lot of indie breweries around here. A big one that I used to drink a lot of is O'Connor's. But I've been kind of going, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but I've been going back to like last week I've been drinking a lot of Miller, then I went to Miller Lite, then I went to Coors, then Coors Light, then Bud, and then Bud Light.
Oh, God.
I'm going to
God.
Now. I don't know why I'm going through these, but like when I see these, I'm like, let me try. I haven't had Bud Light since and I was going out with my friends.
There's a good reason you haven't had that in a while, and that's because no one should be drinking that. I'm sorry to anybody who drinks Bud Light, but for fuck's sake, it's like if you're smashed and it's 80 degrees out and you're in a freaking rave in someone's basement, you'll drink Bud Light. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to kind of give it because last time I had it was when me and my friends used to go out into the club in the city, New York City, I mean, and we used to get Bud Light or Miller Lite, whatever it may be, and we always called it the crap beer. And I was just thinking, I was like, what? Since my taste has been more refined, I've been getting a lot of indie IPAs and stuff like that. I said, let me try this. And after going through all those beers again the last week, I kind of have to realize, there's a reason why I stopped drinking it. Yingling, I will have to say, is probably like it's probably the only beer that I will drink that's semi-decent. It's like at the bottom of the barrel, okay. But probably, my next 6-pack I'll get, I'm probably going to go to, there's another indie beer brewery that just came out not too far from where I live. And I hear they make some crazy IPAs, so I'm going to go back to that. The only thing about indie breweries is like you get a 6-pack from a brewery, it's a little like $16, $18. When you can go, and you get a Yingling, get 6-pack, and it's like $7. So it starts adding up when you start like filling your fridge. Like, man, I spent like $60 on beer. That sucks. Versus, I only spent $25 on beer this week. That's pretty good. I'm being budget conscious here.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean,
but the quality is definitely. I think I'm gonna have to go back to those older weeks from.
I mean, I'm from the Wisconsin Milwaukee area, so I'm partial against Budweiser. But I guess if anything, if I'm gonna be a macro beer person, I'm a Miller fan. But they're all swill. Budweiser's made from rice. I think there were actually some protests in Germany during the World Cup there because Budweiser bought the rights to be the exclusive beer provider, and they were protesting that according to German beer purity laws, Budweiser isn't even beer because it doesn't. Because I guess you have to have barley, water, and hops or something like that, and Budweiser has rice in it, so it's kind of like a filler. But anyway, so you're drinking some Yulinging. I'm having some Trigo or whatever you call it, Puerto Rican rum. Pretty good stuff. But anyway, I know we've been talking for
about 2 hours,
going on over an hour and a half, closing in on 2 hours. So we should probably call it quits at this point. I hope everybody enjoyed the episode. I enjoyed it. We talked about a lot of different games, mostly, positive things to say, but certainly, no game is flawless. And I would say these are my 3 favorite games or most played games of 2016. But again, remember that in the case of myself and in the case of Jean, we can only review games that we've played. So there are a lot of games out there that I personally haven't touched. I'm going to guess you haven't played every single game that came out in 2016. John, either?
No, not at all. Not anywhere close. But I keep an eye out for the good ones, and I have limited time, so I only play the good ones, or I try to keep that on my list.
Well, maybe you need to work on getting that 2-month sabbatical so you can play everything that comes out in 2017. Maybe get it from like October to December. So 3 months. Take October to December of next year and just play everything that came out in 2017.
Well, hopefully 2017 will come out with a bunch of great, good games. I can tell you one thing for sure, guys. Even though we have a lot of Star Wars stuff going on, don't expect a new Star Wars game for at least 2019. So don't look at a new Star Wars Rebellion, because the stuff that I spent like a whole day and a half trying to research any new Star Wars games coming out. Nothing. Just first-person shooters and third-person shooters. So I'm kind of lucked out.
Anyway, so Star Wars, yes. I think today is the first episode we've mentioned any Star Wars strategy games. There are a few out there it's worth mentioning, but
maybe that's another topic for another. That's something I want to cover on one of the things, but
we definitely can. But anyway, so that's gonna probably do it for episode 8 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Once again, my name is the Historical Gamer. You can call me Matt, and with me is Jean, also known as the Strategy Wargamer. He's over at thestrategywargamer.com. Did I get that right, Jean, or is it just strategywargamer.com?
StrategyWargamer.com.
Okay, I always butcher that. I don't want to send people to the wrong site. I don't know if there's an actual The Strategy Wargamer. But anyway, so I appreciate you guys tuning in. This is another great episode, I hope. And I think next time we'll talk about our most anticipated games of 2017. What do you think about that?
Sounds good. I'll start the list.
All right. Well, until next time, guys, thanks again for tuning in. And this is the Historical Gamer, Matthew, saying thank you for tuning in, and we're out.
See you guys.